Thank you, members of the parliament, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me today. Since its founding in 2002, NGO Monitor has become increasingly aware of a deep-seated relations between civil society actors and actions of extremism and radicalization, especially, but not only, connections to internationally designated terror organizations. Now, the misuse of NGOs by radical actors, it's a worldwide phenomenon. We heard a number of examples. Thank you. We heard a number of examples. Iran managed a huge network of NGOs around the world connected with the IRGC. Hezbollah doing the same, and even Hamas have its own NGOs around Europe, specifically in the UK. And they're all acting freely, most of the times with the disguise of human rights or humanitarian agenda. Those groups not necessarily engaging in physical violence. And most of the times it seems to us, talking from Europe or from the Western world, as something that connected to another part of the world or another conflict. But it's also a major platform for extremism and radicalism inside Europe. And I will use an example from our research, which will show how those NGOs that connected to one conflict can basically affect what's happening inside Europe. One of our research uncovered a network of 13 Palestinian NGOs. 12 of them is and was being funded by the EU and other European governments. And all had board members and officials that tied to the PFLP, the Popular Front Liberation of Palestine, a designated EU organization, designated terror organization in the EU. Now, everything was public. We collected only public evidence, and we showed that more than 80 officials, board members, and employees of this network is deeply connected to a terror organization. We also found that some of them were actually involved and now suspected in the murder of the 17-year-old Rina Shnerb, a famous terrorist attack happened in Israel 2 years ago. Overall, this network received from the EU and European governments 210 million euros over a decade. And one of the ways to understand how a network that connected to one conflict in the world can affect the rise of extremism in Europe is to take a case study, one NGO from this network called Samidoun, and test with ourselves how this process is happening. Founded in 2012, Samidoun serves as the international front to the PFLP. It's well known, they don't shame with it, and they basically coordinating all the PFLP activities abroad, outside the Middle East, many times with cooperation with other Palestinian and European NGOs. It is designated as a terror organization by the State of Israel since February 2021. Now, Samidoun is unique in this network. First, it's the only organization that doesn't receive money from European governments. Also, the financial reports are non-transparent because no one knows where the money comes from. However, it's the only NGO in the network that almost exclusively works on European soil. They celebrate PFLP terror activities on European soil. They called for the release of terrorists who murdered civilians, again, here in Europe, and advocate for the right to armed resistance. Everything happens here. And I will give you a number of examples. In October 2022, Samidoun organized a march here in Brussels. Participants donned the headbands of the Lion's Den terror group. They praised Hamas military leaders who massacre civilians and called against any peaceful solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But they also wished, and I quote, for the defeat of the European Union. In August 2022, Samidoun German branch shared pictures of a gunman with the words, "No one will surrender the rifle." In June 2021 protest in the Netherlands, Samidoun members repeated the organization commitment to support all forms of resistance, especially the armed one. And those are only few examples. We have hundreds of them. But here is one more interesting detail. The organization has also have an official branch in Iran. And my colleagues will expand on the Iranian front also. And when we take this, PFLP, a terror-designated organization, extreme activity on European soil, and Iran, this triangle should turn some red lights for all of us. Those actions and statements that we hear from such organizations are a threat for the safety of European citizens first. Of course, there are many studies that showed and demonstrated how violent rhetoric in the context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, contributing to the rise of anti-Semitism and eventually to the rise of violence to all the groups, to everyone. Fortunately, some countries actually started to act against the presence of Samidoun in Europe. Germany has expelled Samidoun chairman, noting the organization ties to the PFLP and the promotion, and I quote, of hatred and anti-Semitism. In 2022, the EU denied, through Netherlands, the EU denied entry for Samidoun leaders, and France dissolved the local branch of Samidoun, citing its, and I quote again, calls for hatred, violence, and discrimination. Only recently, following public information we sent to a number of groups in the US, credit card companies in the US blocked the ability of Samidoun to raise money towards its pass-through foundation in the US. These are encouraging signs, but they are insufficient when you do it by its own. Europe cannot tolerate an extremist terror-linked group publicly inciting to violence. Calls that can be easily translated into violence towards your own citizens. Samidoun is only a case study, is only a small example of this phenomenon. It's Europe's responsibility, but it's also the civil society responsibility to ensure that those groups, like Samidoun, do not lead the public discourse. Freedom of speech and criticism, absolutely yes. Incitement and hatred, not here. That's a crucial point. And Europe must ensure that first, taxpayer money funds are not provided to those groups, even if we have very small evidence, very small doubt. We must ensure that. But also, we need to make sure that actors like the one we presented are not misusing the strong and valuable European freedom of speech, especially on European soil. Failing to do so not only endangers the lives and safety of people, but it also empowers the radical voices on the expenses of the moderate ones. Accepting this responsibility is the only way to advance peace, human rights, and stability, both home and abroad. Thank you very much.